Hi all, Nanette here with Potential Actually. As I've mentioned before, when unchecked, stress has a way of worming itself into every facet of our life. This video focuses specifically on better understanding the stress response, how emotions play into that response, and techniques for emotion regulation that assist in managing your overall stress and improving your mental and physical well-being. Dr. Evian Gordon, founder of the Brain Resource Company, developed the world's largest brain database and found the brain has an overarching organizing principle to minimize danger and maximize reward. Your limbic system is the part of your brain that manages this threat reward center, like your personal internal alarm system. Every day, your limbic system is constantly scanning your environment and the people you interact with to determine what or who is a threat or a reward. The amygdala is like the guard dog in your brain. When it senses danger, it sends signals to the hypothalamus and acts like a command center of sorts, coordinating with your autonomic nervous system to initiate the fight, flight, freeze response until the parasympathetic system kicks in to turn off the response. The system is obviously critical to keeping you alive. It allows you to respond to what's referred to as primary threats, ones that put your life in actual danger. It ensures you recoil your hand quickly if you touch a burning pot, or quickly jump out of the way if you're suddenly finding yourself in the path of an oncoming vehicle. However, as the initial surge of epinephrine subsides, the hypothalamus activates the second component of the stress response, known as the HPA axis. This network consists of the hypothalamus, the pituitary gland, and the adrenal glands. Together, they keep sending signals to the body to stay in that active response state. Over time, staying in this state leads to a whole host of chronic physical and mental health issues. Since the limbic system keeps us alive, it has a lot of influence and control over what you pay attention to in the day. One study found your brain even groups nonsense words as positive or negative. Your limbic system is driving decisions in your life all day long. And largely, these decisions happen a half a second before you're even aware that it's occurred, if you become aware at all. This is the challenge of the stress response. It largely activates outside your conscious awareness. In addition, it's stronger, faster, and more long-lasting than our reward response. It reduces our cognitive resources, making it harder to think, making us more defensive, and likely to class everything as a threat. Even the smallest of threats can trigger a stress response. One study showed the stress response kicked in just by seeing photos of things that stress the respondents out. So how do you control something you aren't even aware is happening and that has such a strong response? To some, this may sound surprising, but your emotions can be the key. Your limbic system is also the main center for your emotions. Many scientists believe emotions evolved as a shortcut to quickly and effectively motivate you away from threats and towards rewards. Thus, the best way to tap into your limbic system is through emotional regulation. Emotional regulation is a major factor to managing chronic stress. Research has found once a response kicks in, trying to suppress it doesn't work. In fact, it makes it worse. When you attempt to suppress the emotions triggered by a stress response, you reduce your memory of events significantly and make other people around you feel uncomfortable. Have you ever seen a nature video where one of the pack of deer or gazelle catch the scent of a tiger or lion that's stalking them? As soon as they catch wind of it, they get very alert. And this cues others to start having the same level of alertness, and soon that spreads through the herd like wildfire. This ensures everyone quickly cues into the potential threat. And humans have a very similar response. When we suppress the emotions triggered by a stress response, we don't actually diffuse the attention and emotions that are creating that response. And others pick up on that as well. Essentially, repressing it makes it worse, and it passes the stress on to others in your home, in your workplace. James Gross, a professor of psychology at Stanford, set up a number of lab experiments to test emotional regulation. He found that not only does suppression have negative side effects for both the individual and those they come in contact with, it also fails every time. Everyone who thinks that suppression is working is fooling themselves. Suppressing is dangerous because it lulls you into a very false sense of security. As much as you may think you appear under control, there's a number of little tells in your words and your body language that sets others onto high alert and puts them on edge. Eventually, it colors all your interactions and can start to undermine relationships. Likely, this is a contributing factor to people who find they have a downward spiral where one negative incident leads to another. This is why emotional regulation is so critical for not only managing your own stress, but also ensuring that you're not passing it on to others and undermining relationships that would otherwise help you. Gross found there were few proven techniques for emotional and stress regulation: situation selection, labeling, situation modification, and direct experience. We're going to look at each of these. One of the easiest ways to manage emotions and stress is to avoid situations that cause it in the first place. This works very well if you know potential hotspots that will cause you stress and you have a certain degree of control over the situation. This is seldom the case, but the good news is even if you control small pieces of the situation, it will still help you to control your overall stress. For example, if you're going for an interview, you can ask questions of the recruiter in advance about dress code, directions to the location, anything you should bring. And this will help you feel more prepared, more certain about what to expect, which helps to manage your overall stress. Being as prepared as you can be for an otherwise uncontrollable situation, like an interview, may not completely eliminate your stress, but even a small sense of control over your situation will help you in managing your stress overall. Being aware of situations and people that cause you stress and seeking ways to reduce or avoid those situations, or ways that you can bring them back under your control in some respect, is helpful in advance. But when you're in the situations and the emotions come to you, you may need a more robust strategy. Some people may think that talking about stress will make it worse, when in fact it does quite the opposite. The reason for this is that there's a linkage between your limbic system, the part that responds to stress, and your prefrontal cortex, or PFC. Your PFC is the part of your brain that's responsible for a lot of higher level processing and short-term memory. In short, it's the part that helps us to be rational. You can think of these two systems, the limbic and PFC, as being on a bit of a mental teeter-totter. Neuroscientist Matt Lieberman, an associate professor at UCLA, found as the limbic system ramps up, the PFC goes offline, and vice versa. So one of the easiest ways to get your stress response system under control is by turning on your prefrontal cortex by using labeling. Research has shown this works best when you keep the labeling to one or two words, or when you use metaphors. This seems to activate the PFC more, and it actually activates the area in our PFC that pumps the mental brakes. So once you get going on the stressful line of thought, it's the breaking part that says, whoa, we need to take a step back here. And this approach works really well for low-level triggers. So maybe your kid left their jacket on the floor again, or didn't put their book bag away, or your spouse left their dirty clothes on the floor. These are all good examples of low-level triggers where labeling can help. So let's try this activity right now. Close your eyes. Think of a recent situation that annoyed you, and just bring that situation to mind and let it play out again. Just see the scene unfolding. And as you do that, tap into what the emotions or feelings or the overall energy that that situation is bringing. What are you feeling in your body? Now, if you were to put a big old sticky note on top of the whole situation, what would that label be? In 1 or 2 words, what sums it up? Are you angry? Sad? Panicked? Overwhelmed? Powerless? Discouraged? Resentful? Confused? Frustrated? Embarrassed? What word encapsulates all of that you're feeling? Now, once you've selected your word, you can just let the rest of that go and come back into the present moment. Building your emotional vocabulary will assist you with your labeling, and over time you'll get better at catching and diffusing these smaller triggers. But what if your kid knocks over and smashes your favorite vase? Or your spouse forgets to turn on your alarm and you're suddenly late for work? And these bigger triggers require you to bring out more heavy-duty mental arsenal. Reprisal is basically looking at a situation from a different perspective. Kevin Oshner, professor of social psychology at Columbia University, found that as people reframe situations in a more positive light, they greatly increase the activity in their PFC. There are 4 main types of reprisal you can try, and they vary in degree of difficulty to implement. The first and the easiest is normalizing. It's just looking at your response to the situation to see if it's normal or appropriate. You may need to stop and ask yourself, what would an appropriate response to the situation be? Is it likely someone else is having this response or reacting the way that I have? Would others be struggling with a similar issue or emotional response? And this just helps to put your response in a frame or a context where it really is normal to have that response and you don't need to be defensive about it. The second approach is called reprioritizing. By thinking about how important the issue or situation is, it forces you to take a step back and think about it in a bigger perspective. For example, you might ask yourself, in 10 or 20 years from now, how likely is it that I'm going to remember it? Is it really that important? Is it possible that if for a week from now, this is just going to be a funny anecdote? Am I getting really worked up about this because it's really that important? Or is there really something else that's more important that I should be focusing on? The third type is repositioning. This is where you strive to see the situation from a third person or outside perspective. In this approach, you might want to ask yourself, what does this situation look like from my child's or spouse's or boss's or coworker's perspective? What advice would a friend give me who is in a similar situation? Or you can even think of a role model or someone who's really adept at dealing with these particular kinds of situations and how they might handle it or the advice that they might give. The fourth and final type is reframing, where you look for new and more positive meanings, explanations, and interpretations. In other words, you're sort of looking for the silver lining. In this instance, you can ask yourself really interesting questions like, if I had nothing to lose, how might I approach this situation? What am I learning from this situation? What perspective could I take that would move me forward? is this belief I'm holding on to, or the story that I'm creating about this situation, even true? Is there other ways that I could look at this? Are there ways that I could rewrite this story for myself so I'm feeling less triggered? You can consider these 4 approaches like a buffet, choosing one or more in combination to suit the situation and how triggered you are. The more triggered, the more of them you're probably going to need to walk through. And it's probably easiest to start at normalizing and work your way up from there. Don't try to force a step if it's not working, because that's just going to add new frustration. So just sit with it for a bit if you need to. Let's try going back to the scenario that you had called up earlier in the labeling exercise. Or if you don't feel like that's a good scenario, feel free to choose something else. And let's try working through these 4 types of reprisal to see how that feels in each situation. So bring that scenario back to mind. You can close your eyes if it helps to take you back into that moment. Now, as that situation starts to unfold and you start to feel the emotions coming from him, start asking yourself, is my response appropriate to what's happening? Would someone else have the same reaction or emotional response that I am right now? How important is this situation in the grander scheme of life? Is it likely to be something that you'll forget 10 or 20 minutes from now, or by tomorrow or the end of the week? Is it really worth your time and energy to have the level of emotional response that you're having? If a friend came to you with the same situation, what advice might you give him or her? Can you think of someone that you admire? If they were in that situation, what might they tell you? What advice might they give you? And what might this situation be trying to teach you? Is there a different perspective or story that you could bring that would help you move forward or make you feel less triggered? Feel free to sit with these scenarios and go through these questions again if that's helpful for you. Direct experience is really all about mindfulness. In my video on why meditate, I go into detail on direct versus narrative circuitry, so if you want full details, feel free to check it out. Suffice to say, there are 2 distinct ways of experiencing the world: narrative and direct circuitry. Narrative circuitry is our default mode. It's past and future focused. So when you have moments where your attention wanders, you'll notice you start going into planning, daydreaming, ruminating over events of the days or events that have yet to come. Whereas direct circuitry is focused on dialing into the present moment. You're in the moment experiencing sensations as they come in. This is a trait everyone has in some degree and one that can be developed. And in most circles outside of academics, it's known as mindfulness. It's important to know that mindfulness is not the same as relaxation. Dr. Yi-Yun Tang found that there were significant differences between people who practice mindfulness or honing their direct experience circuitry and those who simply participated in relaxation techniques. Among other things, the mindfulness group had 50% greater immune function and cortisol levels were lower. This suggests that mindfulness is better at managing stress than relaxation. In addition, investing in mindfulness pays off in the short and long term. There are many studies that show even small doses of mindfulness training every day can have significant impacts on improved emotional regulation and overall stress reduction. Also, in the long term, you'll find you can move your direct experience from being a trait to a state. That's to say, those who practice mindfulness are overall less triggered and better able to sense strong emotions that are arising and control. Essentially, cultivating mindfulness enables you to remain in a state of equilibrium regardless of what's happening around you. One of the best tools for increasing your mindfulness is meditation. To wrap up this video, I'll leave you with this mindfulness meditation to assist in managing stress. Okay, just assume a comfortable seated position. You can be on a cushion with legs crossed, in a chair. Just make sure your feet are flat on the floor if you're in a chair, and that your back is straight and supported properly. And make sure the same thing if you're seated down on the floor, make sure that you have enough support so that you can sit comfortably with your back straight. Just get into a comfortable position. You can close your eyes or just have them downcast. We're just going to start to relax by taking in a deep breath, letting it out. Taking another deep breath through the nose. You don't have to strain or rush it. Let it out again. Just let it come naturally. Okay. Let it out again. Just allowing you to come to a sense of relaxation. Begin to feel into your shoulders, your neck, your lower back, your arms, your hands. Just notice if there's any sense of stress, clinging. Just breathe into that space. And as you exhale, just let any stress that you're holding release. Feel your physical body relaxing and releasing. Letting go of any tension that's been stored up. Check in with your jaw and your face. Allow any tension that you're holding in there to just relax and release. And just allow your breath to become steady and relaxed. Just allowing it to slip into whatever natural state that it takes. Now begin to notice your thoughts. You don't need to get involved with them. Just let them come and go like clouds floating across the sky. You may begin to notice outside sounds. Maybe it's coming from your house or somewhere outside. Dogs barking, cars going by. It's okay. So let those things be. Release any attachment that you have to your surroundings being perfect. And instead, come into a state inside yourself where you feel calm, relaxed, and centered. Bring your attention to your breath. You're not seeking to control the breath, just to watch the breath as it goes in and out. You may find it easier to focus on the sensation of the breath. Maybe noticing how your rib cage goes out and in. Or notice the feeling of your breath on your upper lip, in your throat, your lungs. Just find one spot. Focus your attention on the sensation of the in and out of your breathing. You may find that you're getting pulled away from the focus on your breath into thoughts. You find your thoughts are particularly cluttering today. Imagine them being cleared away. That you have a broom and you're going to sweep them to the side. You can come back to them later, but for now, all that exists in your world is your breath. And your focus on it going out and coming in. Again, if thoughts are taking you away from your focus, just gently release the thought and bring your mind back to the breath. You may find it helpful to just say thinking when you notice yourself getting caught up. Upon thinking the word thinking, just release the thought that had been enveloping you and come back to focusing on your breath. See if you can continue to return to your breath. Do not be concerned with being drawn away, only that you are gently and with lots of compassion for yourself, returning to that breath. If you wish to continue focusing on your breath, you can do so. If you're ready to start coming out, just begin returning your focus to the space that you're in. Start wiggling your fingers and toes. Don't rush this piece. Just gently pull yourself back in. Maybe take some more Deep breaths. In this video, we looked at how your limbic system, the threat reward center of your brain, causes your stress response. And that since your limbic system functions below your level of awareness, it can be challenging to control our stress response. We also looked at how the limbic system throws out emotions as ways of motivating us away from threats and toward rewards. And this makes emotional regulation a key part of managing and getting our stress response under control. Finally, we looked at 4 emotion regulation techniques that assist with managing stressful situations. The first, situation selection and modification, where you control or modify the situation to avoid or reduce potential stress triggers. Second, we looked at labeling, where we thought of a stressful scenario and called up 1 or 2 words to label or describe the emotion or energy or situation of the situation. Third, we looked at reprisal, where you can select from 4 different aspects of reprisal depending on the situation and how triggered you're feeling. Normalizing, reprioritizing, repositioning, and reframing. Finally, we looked at direct experience or mindfulness and how we can use meditation to make mindfulness a state rather than just a trait and assist us in remaining calm regardless of the situation we find ourselves in. I hope this video has given you some ideas on how you can more easily regulate your emotions for a happier limbic system and better overall stress management. Thank you for joining, and happy meditating.